Hello, people and bots. Grandpa Canuck here, and we're back in car manufacture. Oh, my two green cheek conures, Bonnie and Clyde, are going to say hello. I'm sure they'll add their comments to the tutorial. This tutorial is about assembly lines with some ideas and suggestions. Now, most people think that a straight line is the best way to operate. Well, it's simplistic, but not always the best. Now, you also, the spacing. Here you can see I have a gap of 4 and a gap of 4 on each side of this assembly line. And that's not necessarily the best use of space. I end up with all kinds of little extra spaces that I don't need either. Now, first of all, this is for early access 1.0.1c. The more updates through early access that come into play here may change this tutorial and how things are done. So assess the current version of the game versus the version of the tutorial here, 1.0.1c. So when you're looking at this, look for strategic ways to use your space. Here you can see I have space, and I'm able to put a storage area here in the middle. So this allows the mechanics to get parts and be really, really close rather than placing it at the ends of your assembly line. So that is one way to make a slight improvement. Secondly, is the space between does not have to be 4 spaces. Okay. It could be less. Okay. Straight lines. Straight lines are nice. But once you get up to 10 or 20 in length, may not be the best use of space. So here you can see I have an S going into another S here on my assembly line for 20 assembly stations on this line. Now, I could add a lot more robots to this, and the center only has 3. And between this one, there's only 2. So you do not need to leave 4 or 5 spaces side by side. Sometimes you want a gap and you want a car to be held because this station works ahead, and therefore having a turn at that point could be beneficial. So here I have an S-curve going into an S-curve. I've wasted a little bit of space here simply because I connected into an old assembly line. What you want on your assembly lines is something at every station. So if you can get a 10 to be like this, here you can see I go around here, okay, and I've got stuff going at every station. This is working efficiently. To make it work efficiently, sometimes you need more than one robot. Sometimes one robot is too many. Example, here we have a certain type of part. Okay, the chassis. The chassis is 1.77. It's a heavy, so I cannot put many chassis there. Most I can do is 3, and with the other parts here, it's adding up. And all I can do is put 2 of each part in there for my maximum of 6. And there's 3 parts to be added. So with 2, it's going to add them quicker, and I give a chance to refill them. If I only had 1 here, I would use that 1 or 2 parts on 2 vehicles, and somebody's going to have to bring in more before I can build a 3rd car. So sometimes you need 2, 3, 4, 5, depending on your speed. Watch your assembly line for areas of congestion. One likely area is the area that contains larger parts. Okay? larger parts can be a problem. So when you look through here, you see body frame, station 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1.3, a larger part. Okay. This one over here, this assembly line, a chassis. We look at the chassis, and this chassis is 6. So the machine can only load 1. So here, even with 3, I'm falling behind the station with 2, and I haven't even gotten any more supplies here yet, and this station with 1 is just moving everything ahead. So sometimes these lines will be different for every different automobile. So just don't blatantly change them over. Also, you may need to change the distribution of how these are divided. Also, notice here, station 12, 13, and 14 have nothing. Okay? That happens to be these stations here. Bang, bang, bang. And so the car will just instantly move right through those stations. I don't even need them there on this particular model. And I can't divide it up much more on this particular model. Okay? So 20 is probably 1, 2, 3, 4 stations more than I actually need. I can probably do the same effect for this with 16. So when building an assembly line for a particular car, keep that in mind. You may not need 20. When you're starting out, things are more compact. Here we have a 10. Okay? But again, here is an example where the body case is a 6. And by adding these other parts, I can't do them. All I can do is that one with a 6. So I've got 3 doing body parts and 1 doing other parts. Okay? And that's just simply to give them a chance to get filled. The other thing with assembly lines is I like mixing my mechanics and my robots. If I have a machine that is out of supplies, I like to have supplies here and a mechanic able to run over and do it. So even though this is fully automated all the way along, okay, I run with at least 1 mechanic, okay, and I have 4 mechanics free. So if there's a big jam up, all the free mechanics can run over there, but there's 1 designated for the line as a minimum, even if it's a fully automated line with robots down the whole way. Okay. Have convenient break spaces so your employees don't have to go a long way. Now, why is this S any benefit over a straight line? Logistics. Getting stuff here. If I had to string this out 20 long with no spacing between them, I would be coming way over here with parts. And I don't want to do that. I want to carry less distance. So the less distance I have to carry, and that is one of the difficulties in the game right now. Right now, there is not this storage conveyor nodes. You cannot move things to one storage area to another storage area and then have laborers. So doing it automatically. This storage conveyor node is going to change this tutorial entirely, change the layout of assembly lines entirely when it's introduced. So when that's introduced, this tutorial will be half outdated. So have convenient areas for people to rest, and also I have worked in the training areas into a middle area here, and I lay out storage for parts between 2 assembly lines in logical locations. So here, this one, right, services all 8 of these. So it's doing 4 and 4. Okay, that's a convenient walk. Similarly, 4 and 4. That's a convenient walk for them. Okay? Now, here's a bit of an oddity. This one, it's in the middle. So the mechanic has a short distance to any of the work areas. Since I'm only using one mechanic, that's kind of handy. So these are different ways to lay out and to use. You don't have to have two open spaces on both sides here, hardly ever. You only need that space when you have an area that is a workstation that has very, very high needs for multiple or the early robots. Okay? Once you have the higher level robots here that take up a third of the space of the early ones, you can compact more together. Watch your assembly lines for where there's a jam up. And if there is, add another robot unit to speed it up. The more you can keep your line going like this, full, the better. Okay. You want as few gaps as possible. Here we're waiting for a mechanic to bring over a part. And it continues on. Okay, notice all of them are working here pretty much in unison. Okay, so if I have the same number of parts, this one's a little quicker. Same number of parts, then they will all be done and then shift ahead at approximately the same time. Oh, looks like these two have an extra part. Well, extra two parts. So here's my slow up. I may want to add a second one there, and that would speed up the line just a touch. Okay. Try to get them all moving fairly unison together. And if you notice, it's still filled up all the way back. So this assembly line is pretty well tuned from start to finish. Okay. So laying it out. Distribute out a similar number of parts or only one row as best you can in dividing them up. This is much easier with more workstations, but it is something to keep in mind even when you're using 2, 3, 4 in the earlier parts of the game. Some of these parts are very, very heavy, and therefore you will need more assembly line robots for it. Keep a line together in your costs. Here you can see I had part of assembly line here that was coming here and eventually came over here and went around. So I went from 10 to 20 on this assembly line. I increased the size of my building over here. Okay, and I linked the old parts to a new part in the middle. Okay, so I do not lose half my money by scrapping everything. Okay. So the less you have to scrap and the more you can plan ahead, the better. Having those large parts closer to where they arrive will save you transporters. Okay? The less transports you can have to use, the better. The less time you have to transport, the better. But do not fill it up with 10,000 parts because you're not making 10,000 cars. The most that I do is 20 to 25 cars in an area at a time before it needs to be refilled. And that's usually these forward areas here, where it has really, really light parts. And here you can see I could probably put 50 in here, but I've only got 25 parts. Okay, and it's filling up at 7%. So I have to use 93% of the parts. Okay, so that would mean there's about 3 left here when an order gets placed, and then I use those 3 as the parts come forward. That seems to work on this production line. Keep that in mind. So everyone's going to be different. And if you have one which is overburdened, like this one, I can only fit 3 parts on, and I can only do 4. So I'm going to have to fill up 53%. Well, I guess I could bring that one down to 30%. But how long is it going to take to get those parts there? So therefore, I need 2 on that spot to get those parts, just to keep it flowing at a good speed. Since you're going to sell the parts off at a loss when you change the assembly line, you don't want hundreds of parts left over when you switch to a new model of car. The less parts left over, the better. Therefore, the trade-off. Okay? Having a massive amount of parts there, which means the person only has to bring it in once, versus replacing the parts all the time. Somebody has to walk over every 2 minutes and replace the part that was just used. Sometimes you don't have a choice on certain parts. Okay. And the example on that would be the body case on a number of cars, which is 6. So between having multiple units and having a mechanic with a backup, I always have at least 4 parts here for any particular item. At any particular spot. I find that is a convenient order, and until I use 3 of them, I don't need to reorder the part. So that's why 30%. Okay. So that's some helpful hints and suggestions on assembly lines. S-curves works well. Having less distance for the transporters until this is added to the game is the limiting factor. You cannot run a factory with 20 straight lines straight across for 6 or more production lines with the amount of laborers that you can hire. It's impossible to get all your storage areas full. So you need to back it up and have these guys walking less distance to the delivery of the parts. Very, very important in this version of the game. Okay. Straight lines are not always the answer. Lots of space is not always the answer, or the best answer. If you have any questions, please leave them. If you have any suggestions on other tutorials, let me know. I'll see what I can do. It takes me about a day to get back to you. I have other tutorials available on this game and others. Please, please leave your comments, suggestions, and remarks. And I'd love to hear from you. So, until next time, this is Grandpa Canuck, going to sign off here. Hoping all you people and bots are having a good day. Yeah, and Bonnie and Clyde, my 2 green cheek conures, they're going to say goodbye too. Until next time, everybody, have a good day, and please, please, be good to each other. Woo, everybody moves. Take care. Bye-bye.